I'd like to welcome everyone who's listening to the sixth edition of Behind the Grow. I'm here today with Tate Dooley, a new friend of mine. I've been all the past podcasts with people I've known kind of 20 years and around there, and I felt a real connection with you and your sales rep and your wife. I really, really like your company. People first, I hadn't tried the products yet. And Tate is the owner of Key to Life, which is a company that manufactures all sorts of wonderful product fertilizers, dry amenders. We'll go through all of that. And he also owns a company called Backyard Farming Supply, which is something that is very close to my heart, to Celia's, and our ideology on life. I watched a bunch of your podcasts and interviews you've done, and it's just so funny. Apart from me being a bit older than you, and doing a magazine, but I've been doing this magazine for 14 years. You've been doing what you've been doing 15 years. I've been in the industry for almost 24, but so much of what you say is what I think when it comes to farming and it comes to product design and different products you use. So I want to get really into a lot of the Key to Life products later because I think they're super interesting. There's one here that I've been using, which is why I know you through your sales rep, through me just having now years of problems with powdery mildew that I have been unable to cure. And it's been very helpful. We'll talk about that after. But why don't we kind of just say hi? If you want to give yourself just a quick little intro, tell us who you are in your words, and then we'll get into the dirt.
Awesome. Well, Eric, first off, I really appreciate your time. Feel the same way about you guys are doing. And, the message that you guys are spreading to the community, and you guys are definitely growers first and for the positive movement of the industry. And I really appreciate that and, harmonize and synergize around that too. So thank you very much for bringing me onto the podcast. I've been around the block here in the cannabis space. Obviously, there's always people that have been around longer, and there's always people that know more, and there's always people that have more experience. I consider myself a student until the day I die, first and foremost. I'm always learning, and I'm always looking forward to learning with our customers in real life scenarios and real applications. But with that being said, I've been around the block. I started in this industry at about, on the vendor side, at about 21 years old. Key to Life was basically formed when I was a 21-year-old, and I'm 37 now. So we're talking pushing basically 16 years. Originally, Key to Life was actually the nutrient line behind, hilariously enough, I still keep it to remember my roots, Triple Helix Brewing Systems, where we started with this Compost tea brewer. And I started with the Compost tea brewer when I was a newbie in the cannabis space on the vendor's side, and I was working at a hydroponic grow store. Like a lot of us have been there, right? A lot of us. The Hydro Shack up in Frisco, Colorado.
I've been there.
Actually, Tom Long and Kim Long, and I first started helping them. I think probably 2009 or 10, right around that era. And a bunch of growers would come in and, hey, Tate, I'm having some problems with my fertilizers. And at this point, I only had the tea brewer out. And I was actually in the middle of creating the brewer, basically. And I was actually creating it just like a lot of good products and all sorts of industries start, is I was really creating it for myself and my own grow, looking to maximize my own, opportunity. And one of the things that I ran into the most was, how do you keep your fertilizer mixed up, right? Because that's obviously a big beast. Some people used air stones. Some people did nothing at all. Some people mixed it and flash used it. Some people wanted to get into recirculative pumps. There was a lot of different flavors going on there. Because I'm an organic grower, organics, in my strong opinion, needs to have some sort of aeration and or recirculation, or it's all going to fall to the bottom. It's going to go anaerobic, especially when you're using microbials and stuff like that. And so I kind of started there because I've been an organic guy and an organic grower my entire career. And, at this point, I do like synganics, synthetic organic hybrid growing. I feel kind of brings the best of both worlds. And I feel like a lot of cultivators are kind of pushing those buttons to gain back quality, but to give the consistency of the synthetic, consistency and horsepower, especially when it comes to like a micronutrient and a phosphorus available perspective. But, bringing it back, I started with a tea brewer, and a lot of people were having problems. In Summit County was a heavy organic grow area. And so I started with the tea brewer and just keep helping people to keep their mixes mixed up and aerated and not, going bad and things like that. And then it was actually kind of funny. And probably about 2010 or 11 era, I started kind of toying around. And so Triple Helix Brewing dropped in 2009. And by the time 2010 and 11 came around, I was basically crafting up the first batches of the Key to Life nutrient line. And it was actually really funny. I would basically take ingredient A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I would put them into literally a Tupperware about this big. A Tupperware. And I would mix it with the lid on. And then I would give it out to people. I wasn't even selling it at this point. I was just looking for proof in the pudding. And I would take either a half cup or a cup, and I'd put it into a Ziploc bag, and I'd write the instructions on the Ziploc bag with Sharpie markers. That was where this whole thing started. And so after, a little while, people kept coming back, and they're like, dude, what are you putting in that stuff? Because I was giving the tea out for free at the Hydro Shack, and I was letting people try the powdered Ziploc bagged elegant instruction that I was giving them. And they kept coming back, and they're like, holy crap, dude, what is in there? What are you putting in this stuff? And I was like, all I really care about, I view nutrients just like I view cannabis. It's all about quality. It's all about purity, and potency helps too. So obviously, in the cannabis realm, potency is not everything. It's all about the quality, and it's all about the inputs and the cleanliness and not watering it down with a whole bunch of other stuff. No pun intended, right? Because we're a powdered nutrient line. And so basically, I started getting really good feedback, and people were like, what are you putting in there? And that kind of leads us into the product thing that we'll dive into more later. And I was like, I'm putting super high purity humic acids, fulvic acids, amino acids, kelps, sugars, microbials, blah, blah, blah.
Where were the NPKs? Where was the base for your NPKs? Because the other stuff, we hear about those ingredients a lot, but where were you sourcing to get this super high purity, soluble NPK, sulfur, iron, calcium? Because that's not so easy to find if you don't know where to look.
Yeah, so obviously I was the guy at the grow store. Well, rewind, one tangent is I went to plant and greenhouse science school at Front Range Community College while I was in high school. So I was taking a plant and greenhouse college class, a part of my high school program for my junior and senior year.
All right.
So I would spend my time in the greenhouse every single day. It was a Monday through Friday class, basically from first thing in the morning to about lunchtime. And then I would show back up to high school, drive from Fort Collins back to Loveland, Colorado, where I went to Thompson Valley High School. And I basically would spend my mornings in a greenhouse with a really awesome teacher that was all about, compost, NPK, and finding clean ingredients, and kind of dove me down this whole path. So I was looking into ingredients, and hilariously enough, she would even basically gift me small amounts of soil and amounts of nutrients from the classroom. And I was actually helping my buddies set up little basement 1 and 3 and 6 plant grows all the way back to mid high school.
Well,
So I started pretty early. There's obviously people who've started earlier, but I started pretty earlier, and I just fell in love with the entire concept of like soil science, microbiology, purity of inputs, and sourcing inputs, to come off my tangent and come back to where you were.
yeah.
So I was looking globally. I was buying stuff from all sorts of places in the United States. I was getting stuff out of India. I even messed around with a couple of the inputs from China. I messed with stuff. If it was an input source that I hadn't tried, I wanted to try it. So like the background and the research and development behind Keto Life's inputs, some of these inputs we've gone through 20 and 30 different input sources to find what we've got. We put a significant amount of time, over a decade, into finding the most pure, the most clean, and the most potent products and inputs that we could possibly find. We didn't give a shit about the price. The price was null and void at that point in time, especially because the margins were pretty good in the industry at that point in time.
Yeah, yeah,
So on the cultivator side, and
right.
so we just went full force into, let's bring the best products possible that I feel proud about using in my grow, and let's give those solutions to the growers.
Yeah, nice. Well, that's a good story, and again, probably why a lot of it resonates with me because Silly and I, this is our 30th year we've been together, and since day one we've been organic food eaters, organic gardeners. I used to grow my cannabis mostly organic, and now I do the hybrid where I use minerals and I use organic dry amenders. Just cause I don't know, like maybe you said earlier, I seem to get better results when I mix it too. But we were a very organic family. Yeah, and well, I don't know. I've grown like even like Canna. I've run the full Canna range or the full Mills range or whatever, and fully synthetic and had quality that again for me as a 25-year grower was as good as any of the organics I did. It's it. The only thing I ever say on the organic side that I think is superior is the sun. There's something that the sun does in terms of terpene expression that, in my experience, where I've done the same cultivar outside and inside, and it was beautiful inside, and maybe it even had a higher cannabinoid levels, but it smelled better under the sun. And if you left it too long, it's almost like the sun would degrade it faster because it's just so powerful, the sun. But yeah, so I'm a big sun advocate, but I live in Quebec, Canada, and well, the sun really sucks and it's completely unpredictable here. The neat thing about Denver, I don't know if are you in Denver now, or are you outside Denver? But
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm in Broomfield, but
okay, yeah.
basically Denver, smack
But
dab in between Denver and Boulder.
it's a really interesting fact about Denver that most people, even a lot of Americans, don't know that it's the capital city that has the highest amount of sun of any state capital in the country.
There's very few other environments in the United States that have more DLI. There's a couple areas in Arizona, a couple areas in Nevada, but it's kind of, it's neck and neck, right? We have a lot of sun. We have a lot of high altitude, so we're closer to the sun, and we don't have a whole ton of rain, and we don't have as much atmosphere getting in the way.
Yeah.
We also are bombarded with our advantages in Colorado over some of those other places I just named is we have a lot more CO2, and we also have a lot more negative ions that directly relate to oxygen reduction potential value for plant uptake through stomata.
Can I take a note and you could write us an article on that? That sounds super interesting and something I don't know a lot about.
Yeah.
And it's also dry as fuck in Denver, and it's one of those cities if you're not ready for both the altitude and like you better have some lippy because that place is horrible. I love it.
That is
Horribly,
true. You got to stay
horribly,
hydrated.
Oh, it's so dry there. So, all right, well, we'll come circle back around to some of the key to life stuff. I definitely want to talk a little bit about your backyard farming, your backyard garden, which is beautiful. I'm a raised beds guy also. Flip the finger to the groundhogs who are always trying to get into, shit, But
The squirrels too.
you know what? The squirrels leave my garden alone here. The blue jays are really bother for berries and grapes and stuff like that. And then the deer. I've had a couple years with the deer come in and just will eat. For example, one year they came in at every single carrot, every bit of green. It looked like someone came the night and robbed my garden, which didn't happen. I saw the tracks. And they've come in one year when the best grape year I ever had. I must have had 50, 60 pounds of grapes. And Silly and I are waiting, tasting them every day. And okay, we're ready, we're ready. And I swear we said, they're ready, we're getting them this week. Go outside the next day, every single grape gone. 100, like 50 pounds of grapes gone. That one deer came, and that deer must have had I don't know what happened to it in terms of its digestive system. But yeah, every single grape. So yeah, we have issues, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, I had the exact same thing happen with raccoons and squirrels. Raccoons would show up and decimate my little baby corn plot. I do like a 5 by 10 of corn, but I get crazy high yield. And same thing, I had 180 corn cobs of about 300 and 310 corn cobs on a 5 by 10, completely demolished by raccoons.
Hold on a 5 foot by 10 foot garden, you had how many?
Over 300 like 14-inch corn cobs.
And how many plants is that?
I didn't count the plants, but I was getting about, because I was doing direct seeding.
Five, four per plant?
Yeah, 3 and 4 per plant.
That's a stacked corn garden. I mean, I know they're supposed to be beside each other. They pollinate each other. They need to be together, but that's impressive. And
Yeah.
like I said, anyone, you could go on the Keto Life page. You could go to the Backyard Farming Supply page and watch some of Tate's videos on. I mean, for me, I say especially the backyard farming because it's more practical information. I think there's a course you offer for I don't know what it was, $47 or something, or 27, or I don't know. It's not a lot of money, and it opens it up to all the information. And I find it super impressive. I love gardening, and so why don't you tell us a little bit about Backyard Farming Supply, how that started. I did notice that videos seemed to stop about a year ago, but I understand that making content can be absolutely exhausting, and especially when you'd like to have in the hundreds or thousands of views, and maybe it's not what you want. It can bring you down. I will try to motivate you to rekindle that energy and to take time in your garden. It doesn't have to take lots of time for you to video what you're doing to motivate people to do the same thing. It's very motivational. Your garden is very motivational. I'm telling you now, this is why Silly and I started the magazine, both obviously to educate cannabis growers, to be better cannabis growers, but to understand the importance of bees, birds, butterflies, to grow turmeric and ginger, to do exactly what you've done in your backyard, which create this food, such a beautiful garden that it must, when you walk out there and get to gardening, that's I guarantee your happy time. And you have two beautiful young children. I see them in your videos all the time. They're so cute, and they got their little, they're in there with you. And again, anyone who has kids and you don't know like how to connect with your children, well, gardening is an amazing way. And I've done it with both my kids, and now they're super into gardening. Well, kinda. I mean, they're 16 and 22. They're not like they have other things to do, but they do
They're
like
on a
gardening.
little hiatus. They're
Yeah.
doing what all 16 and 20-year-olds
Well,
do.
I have a university student who lives downtown Montreal. There's no gardening there, but you should see the plants in her house. Like, she loves her plants. And my son, he's 16, and all he cares about is sports. Well, he cares about a lot of stuff, but he likes, he likes the fact that I like gardening.
Nice. Yeah.
So yeah, so tell us about Backyard Farming Supply.
Yeah. So, well, first off, fully agree with everything you said. And for us, it's definitely it's our Zen zone for sure. It's where we escape the technology. I'm pretty hardcore technologist. I mess around with computers and AI and videos and social and all the different things. But at the end, and Zoom calls and podcasts and all the stuff. But at the end of the day, Sorry,
Oh,
what?
I was just going to say, I got my little laptop in front of me. Tate showed me before what's in front of him. It looks like bloody Star Trek dashboard. So yeah, it's very different. But go on. Sorry, didn't mean to
It's all
interrupt.
good. It's all good. So yeah, it was really funny. So I first started. Well, I've been in this house for 9.5 years. So right when I moved in, one of the very first things I did was I built the 5 foot by 10 foot garden bed out of wood. That was my very first one, and I still have it. It's in rough shape now because it's getting a little old and it's starting to decompose a little bit, but I still have it. And that was the first bed that I built at my house. I was like, I want a little garden. We own a fertilizer company. How are we not going to grow some of our own food? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I love plants. I've always loved plants ever since I was a really tiny kid in the garden with my mom type of situation, and my dad and my brother. And so, I started kind of just toying around with that. I actually wasn't growing cannabis. I was growing, peppers and tomatoes and just straight food. And I feel that cannabis, a little tangent, I feel that cannabis is a very good entry point to falling in love with Mother Nature, especially for dudes. Like, dudes, it's a little bit, more geared toward, let's say, the female audience, right? You get a lot more female gardeners than men gardeners, but I don't know. I don't know. You find a lot of old men that love gardening too. So I think
Not
it's
in Europe,
49-51. You know what I
but
mean?
in Europe, like in Germany or Belgium, or like, you get a lot of Holland, like men who garden. It's not a gen like it's different. But in North America, I would probably agree with you, but still, I, men love gardening too.
I agree. I agree. And I love gardening, obviously. And I probably like gardening more than my wife does, and she loves gardening as well. You know what I mean? So with all of that being said, like I feel like cannabis is a good gateway plant. That's a good
Yeah,
way to call it. And
yeah.
I don't mean that type of gateway. I
No, the
mean a
good
gateway
gateway.
to Mother Nature. You know what I mean? Like you fall in love with the plant, you fall in love with nature, you fall in love with the sun, the birds, the bees, the butterflies, the earthworms, the texture of the soil, the technical systems to be able to
Well,
keep plants alive, a lot of different things like that, right? So basically, I started there, and then the next year I added a couple more beds, and then the next year I added a couple more beds, and then obviously in between there I had a tea brewer, and I was using our own products, and over time, and this actually about 2020, 2020 I feel was a huge year for personal gardening. Um, People had time at home. I don't want to get into any of that stuff, but people had time at home and people had time with the family. And my son, who's 10 now, so he was 5 actually in 2020, which is weird to think about. I walked out and we have a decent sized urban property. We don't have a farm by any means. However, everybody thinks that I have acres of farm, which is hilarious from the YouTube videos. And I asked him, "Hey, buddy, what do you think we should do? Do you think we should keep this play set that's kind of old and it was here before we bought the house and it might need upgraded or fixed. It's kind of falling apart. You think we should keep that, or should we rip it down and build a whole bunch more garden beds?" And my son goes, "Well, Dad, we live across the street from the park and the green belt. Why don't we rip it down and let's build more garden beds?" Obviously, he said it in 5-year-old language, but that's what he meant. Let's take it down and build more garden beds. I can play across the street. I was like, awesome. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Perfect. And so we started literally within 5 minutes of that conversation, taking down the play set and uh, designing the next version of our garden plan. And then that went from about 2020 to about 2022. And by the time 2022, June, July, I had maxed out literally every single space in my entire backyard garden. And in about 2020 as well, my one of my 2020, 2021, my buddy came over and he's like, dude, he's like, I think you can make a bigger impact by teaching people how to grow food. You guys obviously love this with all your heart and your soul, and you're living it. You guys should rebrand Key to Life and create a food company. I was like, well, I can't rebrand and get rid of my baby. You know, Key to Life is my first business child, and I will be doing this as long as I can help it. And so we started backyard farming right around that time, and it was just originally, hey, let's show people how to grow food. And then it really morphed into, why is my backyard farm so special? And it's because I look at it like a commercial cultivator. I look at it um, in a systematic format. So over here, literally, it's like a conveyor belt. I have a indoor hydroponic seed starting room that has like 3 easy cloners and a bunch of vertical racks and a double stacked 3x6 and 3 or 4 wire racks that are 4 levels high with easy clones and or clone domes on them. So I start in there, I come out to the garden, and I put the plants into their desired canopy support. So certain plants like vertical, certain plants like horizontal, certain plants don't need much soil, so they're in lower beds. Certain plants need really deep soil for, bigger production, stuff like that. And so I just really started to take my commercial cultivator mindset and apply it to my backyard farm. And then I also automated the whole thing. So I've got 5 Key to Life Cyclone brewers that are hooked up and fully automated to the entire vegetable garden, so I can live my life, not be, a permanent farmer, because that's one thing that I find that kills people's motivation is they figure out that they have to be a permanent farmer, and that much work sometimes takes the wind out of their sails. And if they're not a permanent farmer, then they're just not going to get the plant health and the plant yield that they would. And when people get low yield and or diseased or dead plants, that also kills their mojo. You know what I mean? So we came at it from a commercial cultivator's perspective to bring a systematic format and automation and really maximize yield and maximize nutrient density and therefore flavor. And then it goes to like the brain station, which is irrigation and fertigation and automation. And then I actually have a post-harvesting station, which is like a giant stainless steel sink and actually an outdoor shower. So I can be clean when I go in my house and I'm not spreading, dirt and potentially bugs around and all the stuff. And I can prep my food without taking over the entire kitchen. And then I also have an outdoor kitchen. And so, whole assembly belt.
Yeah, so anyone who's listening, it doesn't matter if you just have a small little space. So I went through a bunch of the stuff on the site. I said I really, really loved it. So you could have a medium-sized backyard. You could have even a balcony. There's information on this site for everyone who's interested. And look, I'm a lifetime gardener. I've been gardening since I was a young child. I consider myself to be, very good at growing food. And I'm excited to start reading some of or watching some of the videos and getting the little package so I can get all the information from there. So I do recommend to anyone. So because on the sense for time, and I don't want to run out of time, I do want to talk about 2 of your products and get
it. One quick tangent. Backyard Farming Supply has over 400 videos on there.
I think there's a lot of information, and like some of the things you're saying that you just said in the back bit, which I'm sure will be a nice little clip because it is the part, what needs to be deep, what needs to be shallow, what should be hanging, what grows vertically, what grows out. If people know that stuff and then plan accordingly, they're going to have so much more success just knowing a couple little things. And then, of course, feeding right and giving the good, pure inputs. So the product I want to talk to you quickly about, this is the Key Life product that got me and you together, was this. I was never trying to get you guys for advertising. I just somehow got in touch with Ian, who's your sales rep, who's awesome.
Because I had Powdery Mildew. Of 20 years. 20 years I've known to work with Ian.
And he knew from one of my posts something about Powdery Mildew and reached out to me and said, hey, maybe you should try this. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll try anything, man. So, and I've had, like I said, I've had serious powdery mildew to the point that I use a hypochlorous acid product from Canada called Activate. And it's this really interesting product that you can use up, you see 1 mil per liter, but you can use it 100% pure and it doesn't oxidize your plants, which seems impossible, but it's true. And even that did not get rid of the powdery mildew, which is, to me, it's impossible. That doesn't make any sense at all. It would knock it way back, but it would just keep coming back. I mean, I could keep going to what else I've used. Everything. So you guys sent me this, and I mean, I'd love to say it made it all disappear completely. It didn't, but it was maybe the best for knocking it back. And the hypochlorous are quite similar. So not just use them in tandem like this, and then a week later I use that, and I use this, and I use that. And inside I have none right now, which is amazing. There's 3.5 weeks into flowering, and it's the first time in 2.5 years I've had none indoors. I also give a shout out to Garden Clean because I bombed the shit out of my room. And when him and I were talking and mentioned you guys, he went off on this. I use it for everything, and he's like Shameless, one of the coolest guys. I can love that guy.
I love that dude. And,
yeah, he's awesome.
And at the end of the day, if you have a dirty environment, it doesn't matter what you put on your plants because you're going to constantly re-inoculate.
I even had to change my dehumidifier because I knew that one just must be so horrible. I had it in there the whole time that I had powdery mildew for years. So I'm like, I felt bad. But so this product is really amazing. It's one pod. So if you can see, oh, here I have another bag. They come in a little pod. You drop that in 2 gallons for foliar or into 200 liters, 50 gallons for reservoir use. And it's 7 strains of bacteria, 7, 8, 7. I don't remember now. 7?
Number 1, you got it. 7 strains.
Right. And bacteria produce enzymes. Just in case people don't know. I mean, we can go into the deep bit of this. But it has really, really worked for me. And I said I recommend it for everyone to try and even just to use in their garden. Why don't you give us just a quick kind of 2 minutes on enzyme pods, why it's so amazing, and why everyone should try it.
100%. Well, first off, it is unlike any enzyme product on the market. Most enzymes that you buy are first off liquid. Second off, they're usually citric acid based or some type of other carbon chain that basically goes in, it does its conversion, and it basically converts everything back into a organic state or breaks down the carbon chain of whatever it's trying to break down. With that being said, a lot of those enzymes, especially citric acid based or synthetic, they have to be reapplied. And so the reapplication of this enzyme, causes more money to be spent, more process time, more applications before you see real results. And a lot of times those same style enzymes actually damage root hairs. They'll damage plant material, depending on which one, depending on the concentration rate. And that also damage the rhizoflora or the beneficial bacteria that's in the soil. So ours is the exact opposite. Ours is microbial friendly, it's plant friendly, it's root friendly, it works well with water. It also has a bunch of first, secondary, and tertiary plant reactions where it actually triggers the plant back into producing a whole bunch of other plant secondary metabolites, elicit systemic responses, and many other actions. And so by the application of one product, you actually beef up the amount of microbiology in the root zone. You actually reduce the amount of microbiology on the plant in general. You wrap the entire plant in trichomes and terpenes in a beneficial enzyme, which reduces it from oxidizing. You trigger ASR. You trigger PSM, plant secondary metabolites. And really, I could keep going. There's probably another 3 or 4 net benefits that you get from applying one product. But one of my favorite things about it, and especially coming from a powdered fertilizer realm, is one of the things that stops people from using powdered fertilizers is the poof or the measurement. I don't know how to use it, which has always been really ironic to me because, You would think that cannabis people know how to use scales.
I was about to say they all have a scale. All the old time guys have scales. The new ones maybe they don't have scales. You know, they don't need them anymore. I don't know.
I don't really get that. I've always been really confused. They're like, how many milliliters? And I'm like, dude, first off, I've given you a milliliter conversion. But second off, bust out your scale and weigh it out by the gram. It's much more accurate. And I don't have one of those, and that seems hard and difficult. And I'm like, all right. I mean, I'm pretty sure you use your scale all the time. But anyway, so because of that, kind of that was probably the biggest complaint that we've always had about our powdered fertilizer line is it's poofy and I don't know how to measure it. And so the pod is revolutionary, in my opinion, because it makes it very, very easy to use. Doesn't matter who you are, what intelligence level you are bringing into your garden, your measurement technology, all that's out the window. Hey, 1 pod per 2 gallons, 1 pod per 50 gallon, 20 pods per 100 gallon, whatever it is, right? And so it just makes it really, really easy to use. And at the end of the day, I think that right now it is rapidly approaching our number one product. Another really cool thing about it is it's Bacillus safensis, which is a terraforming microorganism. It's one of the most powerful terraforming microorganisms that we found. It was actually proliferated and stabilized by a gentleman in NASA. And I actually had the pleasure of meeting this guy while speaking at the Cannabis Science Conference in 2019 and just got to nerd out with him about all the special properties of Bacillus safensis. The product itself is actually about 50% ready to use activated enzymes from those bacteria. And then the other 50% is those 7 biological species that basically proliferate and continue to create that same community that helps your plants to withstand issues and also convert nutrients to more bioavailable nutrients, reducing action potential and energy required by the plant to be able to uptake nutrients, oxygen, and water.
Super cool. Well, again, it's one of those products I definitely recommend people give it a try. It's not, you guys have smaller sizes if they wanted to, but a little bag like this doesn't cost too much. And I think your top, well, whatever, shouldn't be cheap because it's good stuff, right?
Yeah.
But and so if I'm wrong, correct me, but your top selling product historically has been the Silver Bullet.
Yeah, Silver Bullet is probably one of our number one sellers. And what's really cool is Silver Bullet and enzyme. I like to call it the 1-2 punch. Silver Bullet, first off, is a nutrient. It is, in my opinion, sulfur is one of the most important nutrients because it plays with and is very friendly with all the other nutrients. We as cultivators know that things like calcium are not friendly at all. And they don't like to work with many nutrients. And they cause lockouts all the time and imbalances all the time. And it's an immobile nutrient. And there's a whole bunch of, particularities when it comes to applying something like calcium. Well, sulfur is the exact opposite. Like I said, it plays with everything. It likes to equalize all the other nutrients. It likes to correct ratios, whether they're in imbalance or severely or minorly. And at the end of the day, sulfur's the base carbon chain that's most similar to the carbon chain that's attached to, or the formation of, is a better way to put it, of terpenes. So terpenes and trichomes are all plant secondary metabolites. Sulfur helps to correct nutrition to allow more plant secondary metabolites. And on top of that, it is also a direct stem cell, as we like to say, for terpene development. So that's really, really important to dive into. The other thing is what separates our sulfur. I get this question all the time. Why is yours so much more expensive? What's different? Well, ours is about 98% pure sulfur. Most sulfurs on the market are about 80% pure sulfur. Ours is also, if you look at it, it's like very fine BBs. Every single sulfur particle in the bag is the exact same size, and it's because they're all sized up and encapsulated in an enzymatic ionic surfactant that allows them to stay in suspension, which is really, really important for growers. A lot of sulfurs fall out of the nutrient solution. They don't have the purity, they don't have the stability, and they have a lot of fillers, and they're more inconsistent, and they don't stay suspended.
Yeah, there's a cool little video you have on your site where I think it's one of your sales reps, and he just pours a little bit into the water without even stirring it. You see, like, it hits the bottom, it comes. I mean, it almost looks like it's mixing itself,
It
which is
does.
super interesting. And I looked, dove into about the enzymic ionic surfactant reaction. And I was pretty, that's pretty cool. And obviously, it's different than the average. A question I have about sulfur is obviously sulfur's in a lot of nutrients already. It's part of the makeup. Is sulfur something if you? Yeah, I know, and it may not even be super
Those are
available.
sulfates. Those are sulfates. This is elemental sulfur. There's a difference between the two.
But they eat those sulfates and they use it. And I'm not saying the same way, but it's like it's still getting some sulfur when it's in there,
Yeah,
right?
it still has a sulfur nutrient
Yeah,
value, but the way that elemental sulfur and sulfates interact with NPK and microflora in your root system is definitely different. But continue, sorry.
I know. I'm more curious is that often people are adding, especially I mean historically, say 20 years ago, 15 years ago, when it was a lot of heavy bro science, and people would add boosters and add things and never think about imbalance, lockout issues, and too much of this makes even like some of the silicons that I love, these new monosilicic acids. Well, if you use too much of it, it can cause some problems with something else. I mean, obviously you're not supposed to use too much, but so the sulfur is something that now we add this product to a. Can you put too much of it, or what happens if you're adding too much sulfur?
Yeah, so that's really, really interesting. There's certain other larger nutrient companies that I'm going to keep their name out of it that have actually spent significant amounts of capital actually testing the perfect levels of sulfur. And it is a little bit more of a science, but what they've discovered was around 80 to 100 parts per million of your total parts per million in your feeding regimen brings out the most macro terpene expression. A lot of people don't know how to necessarily measure out by ppm each nutrient. Hannah actually makes a really cool instrument for that. It's not cheap. It's called the Iris. It's about $3,000 or $4,000, but you can actually put. Yeah, it's a little more expensive. But commercial cultivators. If I had 10 million, $100 million invested into a grow, what's 3 grand, right? Um, and so, at the end of the day, there are ways to be able to figure out I'm feeding. And you can also do this on math if you're really good with math. And there's also like ppm and nutrient calculators online that you can access. It's a
We
whole thing, right? But at
we
the
just
end
went
of the
over that.
day,
Yeah, can we measure
most
powder?
yeah, most people aren't going to do that. So we
No, no,
recommend right around 3 grams a gallon in
right.
your root drench situation. 3 to 5 grams is a really good sweet spot. And I actually do recommend this all the way until flush is a root drench for a nutrient perspective. Because at the end of the day, we have to recognize that the most volume of cannabinoids and terpenes are being birthed from the plant at week 6 to 8. And just like a mom, breastfeeding or feeding their children, we need to make sure that we're supplying that new life with all the key components and all the building blocks to be as healthy as possible. And so that's really what sulfur does. Sulfur is really, really good at birthing these terpenes and these cannabinoids at maximum expression. And we've got people that go to about 10 grams a gallon. So 3 to 5 grams a gallon is a great place to start in both foliar and root drench. I would never recommend going more than about 10 grams a gallon. And a lot of people stop using Silver Bullet as a foliar spray at about week 2 to day 21 because you just don't want sulfur. Let's face it, you don't want sulfur on terpenes and trichomes and pistils directly, but you want to get the same attributes and the same health benefits via root zone uptake. And that's really where the 1-2 punch of Silver Bullet enzyme come into play. Use Silver Bullet up to day 21 at maximum 10 grams a gallon. I really like about 5 personally. And then switch over to enzyme day 21 to the day of harvest to protect and clean your plant.
Nice. Well, you guys can see Keto Life products in Garden Culture Magazine. Super happy to have you guys on board. Please go check out both the websites, the Keto Life website and the Backyard Farming. Thank you so much. I'd like to maybe we'll have you on again and we'll find some other technical topics to talk about because you're such a resource. I'll keep bugging you to get you to do some writing for the magazine because I would love for you to share your wisdom with our readers. Can't say how happy I am to have you guys on board and just to be able to have chats with you and have you on. So I wish you all the success. Everyone who's watching and ever watches this, please check them out and give them a try or give Tate a call. I'm sure him or one of his sales reps will be pleased to explain their products to you. And otherwise, my friend, have a great day.
I appreciate you, brother. And yeah, for everybody, feel free to check us out on the socials at Key2 Life Supply. We also have a backup page that's at Enzyme Pods, and we call it enzyme because it's designed to end all zymes. And KetoLifeSupply.com, BackyardFarmingSupply.com, and BackyardFarmingSupply on all the socials.